Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today you join me in the spare room where I keep my Mega Drive, N64 and SNES hooked up, ready to go at a moment's notice. And the plan for today's video had been to go through a box of stuff, a box just here, and also actually a bag, a mask bag of stuff from my childhood home in North Wales. Earlier this year we had to do a house clearance, my brother and I, and we both came away with lots of very nostalgic stuff that in this instance I'm yet to actually go through this stuff properly, and I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to share some memories, to reflect a little bit, and also to sort it if I'm doing it on camera, as it were. This is, to make me actually go through the box. But today has been slightly hijacked by my lovely little dog, Indy. He's being ever so slightly clingy. Indy, clingy. Not quite rhymes, but Indy today is not very happy with the wind outside. He's a bit sensitive to the noise of wind, and he's not really letting me film. So I thought that today I might talk about Indy the dog and how he came to be in our household. So Indy is a rescue dog, and he was found in a park wandering around with his lead still on about 5 years ago, and he was very tuggy when we first met him, and we think that maybe his owner might have been a slightly older person, possibly, or who knows. But then again, I have a story about that in a minute. But basically, at some point anyway, he was either let go or he sort of tugged himself loose, and someone just thought, I can't be bothered with this, and just let him wander around. And he was discovered and handed into a vet, and the vet did her best to try and find the owner, left posters in the park where he was found, but no one came forward to claim him. Poor little dog. Until, that is, a poster found its way into my wife's work office, and so one of the vet's clients works with my wife, and she was handing out posters at this point saying, does anyone want this dog? And so this ugly mug was on the poster, and my wife basically fell in love. And so we went to meet Indy that weekend, although at that point he was called Alberto because the vet is from Italy, and she called him Alberto. And Alberto was in a kennel, and he didn't seem to be very happy. Even though he'd been given a food budget by the vet, well, not him, obviously, because he'd spend it all immediately on rubbish food, wouldn't you? The kennel had been given a food budget for him. He'd still been eating, or been basically getting the gruel that everyone was getting. And so when we first met him, just to see what he was like, he actually threw up. Seemingly his whole stomach contents just in the lane where we were taking him for a quick walk. And that just broke my wife's heart, and also obviously I wasn't happy to see it either. So we thought, okay, he is coming with us, we'll feed him properly, and he's just going to be happier than he is now. Now, this was a weird weekend to grab this dog because we were going camping, of all things. We were going camping on Hadrian's Wall, and this got very complicated for a few different reasons. So first of all, Indy didn't really respond to the name Alberto, and we have no idea obviously what his name had been prior to him being found by the vet, but it became clear that his name was probably a 2-syllable name. That's what he responded to most. So we started sort of all sorts of different names with him, and eventually Indy was the one that we settled on, obviously in reference to Indiana Jones. So he's a dog named after a man who's named after a dog. And so we took him camping, and we were with some friends who also had a dog, and they were getting along quite well, and it was going well. But my wife shared a photo of Indy the dog, and was saying, we have a dog. And unfortunately, the people that we were renting from at the time, actually our friends, or one of my wife's friends in particular, started to threaten us publicly on Facebook, saying it's either the house or the dog, basically. Now, we had agreed to rent in this house because it was doing our friend a favour, and our friend, who had pets in the house, knew that at some point we may well get a pet. And they went, oh, it's fine, we trust you, it's fine, you're doing me a favour. But at this point, my wife's friend was going a bit crazier than usual, and she's a bit erratic at times, and just started saying, it's the house or the dog. And so that first weekend with Indy was mired a little bit by having crappy, in the middle of nowhere, Hadrian's Wall phone signal, and trying to not publicly negotiate whether or not we were allowed to have this dog with our friend / landlord on Facebook. That wasn't good. And actually, Indy, they're actually thinking about it, Indy therefore is the reason that we eventually moved house. Within a couple of months, we had, we had found the deposit to put down on a house, to try and buy a house, the house that we're in now, and we moved. So actually, it's just occurred to me, you, mister, are the reason that we moved house. Yes, you are. Yeah, it's true. So, before we moved house, though, there's a couple of strange things that happened. So initially, when I got him, I trusted him a lot off lead, and I really shouldn't have, because he's a terrier, and also at first he didn't know us all that well either. And being a terrier, he follows his smells very intensively. If he gets a sniff of something, he's off like a shot. People often describe, especially Patterdale Terriers, as having two personalities. There's like an indoor sort of docile kind of, clingy sort of huggable type dog, and then there's an outdoor, follow the smell. And that's because especially Patterdales, and also terriers in general, but in particular this guy, have the instinct to go down and follow maybe badgers or foxes or something into their set and drag them out. Basically, they're working dogs. They would have been working dogs. So he has all the instincts of a working dog, but he doesn't really know what to do with them. So I was out walking with him off lead, and I don't do that anymore because, frankly, it's also inconsiderate for other dog owners if your dog's off the lead, just to run over, to their dog. And we're walking from street to street, and he gets a sniff of something and goes running after it. And he runs around a corner, and before I can actually catch up with where he is, he has found a German Shepherd or an Alsatian, huge dog. And this dog does not like Indy, and Indy does not like German Shepherds. In fact, whenever he sees a German Shepherd, he gets very growly and a bit barky, unnecessarily so, I think, because actually they can be quite friendly. But anyway, this big dog just goes, "You, small dog," picks him up, flips him on his back, and is just, when I get around the corner, is just sort of not mauling him, but sort of nudging him on his belly, basically just sort of saying, I'm the boss, shut up, small dog, go away. At this point, Indy just freaks out, and I have this memory of this little guy running away off down the cobbled lane, his ears flapping, flat behind him, his eyes wide with panic. And at that point, I'm just shouting, "Indy, Indy," kind of thing. And he obviously at that point didn't know whether he was in trouble or not. He thought that possibly I was, well, who knows? I mean, maybe I was somehow ganging up on him along with the dog. I mean, it's hard to know what was going through his mind, but clearly he was very scared. And he just heard someone shouting his name. I was shouting it to say, "Stop, stop, come here, I'll pick you up." But he was off. He ran off. And then I saw him run. So I ran to the end of the alley, and I saw him run across to our front door, clearly trying to get in. Couldn't get in, freaked out even more, and then just ran. And he ran down the street, and he was gone. And I spent the morning trying to find him, calling his name. I got a neighbour of ours to give me a lift around in their car, and just couldn't find him. And I had lots of work I had to do as well. So eventually, I had to just trust that he would be found, and that the fact that he was chipped would mean that he would be returned to us and our address, basically, safely, which he was eventually. And he was found, quite predictably, by the supermarket, looking very sorry for himself, basically going, "Is there food in there?" So looking for food in the supermarket, and he was safe and sound. So we did get him back. But this tendency to be quite scared and nervous, which he's much better with now. He's so much calmer and just happier. And really now it's just the wind that bothers him. Other people and other dogs, he's actually really confident now, which is really good. Which means that actually we've probably done a good job looking after him, which I'm happy to say. Yeah, there was one incident as well that happened one day when I took him into town, into Wallsend, not into Newcastle. And in Wallsend, I tied him up on a tree next to cash converters, because I often do have a bit of a browse in cash converters, see what games they've got, this kind of thing. And he, I just heard this yelping from outside, this desperate yelping. I thought, oh great, he's got into a fight with a dog or something, or he's just, you know, he often gets overexcited when he meets new dogs. Possibly because he was under-socialised as a pup. Again, this may indicate that he had an odd first home. But what really indicates that he had an odd first home was that I went outside and there's this big hulking man, this huge man. I mean, I'm not a small man, but this man was huge. Fat, huge, you know. Just bent down, sort of reaching out to him and sort of going to try and stroke him on the head. And Indy was just yelping and squealing, and he was shivering, and he was just weeing. You know, he was clearly terrified of this man. And this guy, a hideous looking man, you know, lots of sores on his face, a very ugly, very, you know, just a repulsive man. He didn't seem very friendly at all, very, very nice. He said, "Oh, see, he recognises me. That must be my dog. It must be him, mustn't it? Hello." And at that point, I untied Indy, and we both walked away. And he seemed to be super glad to be getting away, and we just kept on going. And the thing is, I can't guarantee that was his owner, or his former owner, but clearly that man reminded him of something, and the dog reminded the man of something. So who knows what was going on there. But he's much happier, much healthier, and generally much more confident than he ever was, or ever has been really since we've known him. So today he's much better than then. And really, the story of having Indy in our lives has been one of one of us actually learning to be a bit more confident as well. Because initially I was terrified that we couldn't afford to have a dog, you know, in terms of the food costs and the commitment to walking him. You know, my wife works in an office, but I even though I work from home, I'm often out of the house. But actually, he's been absolutely lovely, and he's been a real. Well, I think just in the same way that we've brought clearly him a bit of warmth, confidence, and comfort in life. He's brought us a little bit of a reminder that actually doing new things, opening yourself up to new possibilities, maybe even having a kid at some point, for example, won't be as terrifying as it might otherwise be. So I'm so glad that we found each other, and that Indy is in fact in our lives. Oh, if only he knew language, then he'd know exactly what I was saying, but I don't think he does. I think he's just happy to be being hugged. So yeah, that's Indy the dog, and every now and then you might see Indy in the background, perhaps on the sofa when I'm doing Let's Play videos downstairs, or sometimes you might even hear him occasionally barking, maybe at someone going past the house when I'm recording. But today he was just sitting here next to me, next to my leg, just like, I don't want to go anywhere the noise is, but that's okay. And I figured, why not tell the story of how Indy came to be with us. Incidentally, people often ask, how old is he? And the thing is, we don't know. Being a rescue dog, we're not quite sure. We think, well, the vet estimated he might have been 6 or 7 years old when we found him. So that makes him, well, I suppose between 11 and 12 maybe now. So he is getting old, getting on for a dog. But he's always had a little white face as well, for as long as we've known him. He's always had that white mask going on, although it's a little bit greyer than it used to be. So he is getting on. He's a little old man, although he doesn't know it. It's weird. He's super active and sort of inquisitive when it comes to balls and things like that. So, for example, I've got a rubber ball that I often bounce off a wall when I'm thinking, kind of thing, and he's like. You know, he's really sort of playful and really, he sort of forgets how old he is. But when he's in a room with a puppy, we have a friend who's got a big chocolate Labrador puppy who is like 3 times the size of him. He is suddenly reminded, oh no, actually I am an old man. I'm not a puppy. He'll just suddenly become a bit more quiet, a bit more reserved. And maybe it's also because actually he's just trying to figure out whether or not he's still, he's being replaced, I guess, or whether or not he's still the dog of the house, as it were. So he is the dog of the house, and he's the dog of our hearts. But he's also as well a bit of a character who sometimes needs to be put in his place, reminded you are getting on and you need to look after yourself, mister. You're not a spring chicken or a young puppy anymore. But you're adorable. Right, guys, that is the story of Indy the dog. Hopefully this has been an interesting little diversion. It wasn't what I had planned, but it's been a pleasure. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care. Bye bye. Hello.